Alrighty, I might just kick off then, and we'll have a few folks join as we go. Hi everyone, thanks for being here. My name's Matthew. I'm the Member and Community Engagement Manager at Youth Affairs Council WA, and I'm joined here by my colleague Naomi Harding from the Australian Medical Association WA. This is the second iteration of the youth sector COVID forums that we've had, and what we expect to be an ongoing series that will be running at YACWA as we navigate the ever-changing circumstances of the coming months of the COVID context. This session will be running through a demonstration of the newly launched WA Youth Services Directory. But before we get too far into that, I'd just like to acknowledge that we're meeting on Aboriginal land. In my case, that's Whadjuk Noongar Boodja. But I understand that we have representation from across the state at this meeting, so I'd like to recognise the country upon which we're all meeting and offer respects to Aboriginal elders past, present and our young leaders in community. For those of you who would have joined us for some of our Youth Workers Unite sessions back in 2020, just under 2 years ago during our first wave of COVID, these sessions are something of a spiritual successor to that. We'll be using these sessions to kind of connect and navigate issues as they emerge, to network and to share resources and to show off tools like we'll be doing today with the Youth Services Directory, determine some of the needs and trends as we navigate this very changing circumstance for us. This session will be running through the directory, which is a new hub for the youth sector that's been in development for over 2 years in this current iteration, and it's born from a partnership between YACWA and the AMA. Thank you. And it was designed by Loaded Communications, a design and communications company with whom we've both worked for a number of years. And this session will also be recorded and made available for anyone who's unable to attend this morning. And separate to that, everything that we're going through in this session, we'll be doing some separate how-to videos just showing you how to navigate each element of the website. We'll start off with a run through of the directory and then some time for questions and feedback at the end of the demonstration. If you have any questions as we're going along, feel free to type them in the chat and Naomi will be navigating that and pasting some links in as we go. And as we go through that demonstration, Naomi, if you want to just paste in the link for the directory itself, if anyone wants to explore it yourself as we're going, we can do that. I'm just going to start off with a bit of context about this project. Anyone who's been familiar with YACWA's work in this space for a while might remember we had something called Pling, which was a mobile app that was a youth services directory that was launched in, I think, 2013. It was around for a few years, and that eventually transformed into what I call the YACWA, the black and gold WA Youth Services Directory, which is a website much like the one that you're seeing on your screen now, but one that admittedly fell by the wayside a little bit, and we've implemented a lot of new features and totally revamped that new website into what you're seeing here. Similarly, the AMA have published for a number of years a print publication for their members, which is it's a youth services directory for referral tools for medical professionals. And so what this directory aims to do is bring those two things together to connect youth services and medical services, particularly through the Youth Friendly Doctors program, which Naomi will talk about a little bit later, as well as just provide a much needed update to the directory and one that's relevant for our current COVID context. For this particular project, we have to express our gratitude for both the Department of Health and Department of Communities who made this possible with some funding over a year ago. But I might just start off with the demonstration of how this looks. So this is our landing page and this website is live now if you'd like to go to that URL yourself, wayouthservicesdirectory.org.au. And within here we have the basic search bar. So I know some of this might seem fairly intuitive and obvious, but there are a few finicky bits or a few things that are worth demonstrating. So I might just show that, for example. So the way this works is that for a number of services that we already have on the website, we have about 300 that are there now. If you type in, let's say, Youth Futures, you'll see a listing of the services that are already there. So we've already uploaded a number of Youth Futures services and the organisation there themselves. Similarly, if we're typing in, let's say, Broom, we see all of these services that have Broom in their name that are tied to Broom. What this doesn't do at this stage, but will do in the future, and I'll go at the end of this session, I'll go into a little bit about some of the future plans for this. There's no keyword search functionality yet. So if you're looking for services that are in Broom but that don't have Broom in their name, those won't pop up. But there are location-based searches that I will get to in just a moment. But if you know exactly the service you're looking for, this is how we can find it. Scrolling down, we have 26 categories by which we're defining youth services here. And these category, a service can list as many of these categories as relevant to their service. And we'll potentially be adding more or adjusting these as we go based upon what that service need is. But if we start off with accommodation, housing and homelessness, we see here a list of every service that's currently tagged with that category. Now, this is by no means the full service landscape of accommodation, housing and homelessness services in WA. I should note that what we've done here is because we're collecting so much more data in this new iteration of the directory, it wasn't as easy as a simple straight export of what's existing on the old service directory into the new one. We've had to do a lot of this via a very manual process, and we'll be continuing to add bits and pieces ourselves as we go, but our hope is that we've made this functional and usable enough that services themselves can claim and manage and own their data and better represent what their service offers. So this is only a small sample of what's there, and it's what we've input ourselves. And we see that, for instance, Housing Support Metro, that has both the accommodation and the alcohol and other drug service applied to it. There'll be some services that will have, up to a dozen icons listing what their service offers. We have a map function here, so we can zoom in. In my case, I'm on a Windows computer, so that's Control, but if you're on a Mac, that's Command, and see what other services in that category are available in your area. Right here we have Foyer Oxford, which is the building where YACWA is located. And within this element, we have this little eye preview icon that allows you to just have a little bit of an overview of what a service does if you're not yet ready to click through and see, to go to that individual listing. If you want to kind of get a scope of what's out there, a little bit more of a preview, some contact information, you click on that eye icon and go through. We also have some filtering functionality here for Open Now, and that will, based upon the opening and closing times that's been input into the service, that will update that. If we click on an individual service listing, I might jump here to one I've separated earlier for Youth Futures. So this is how the service listing looks, and this is kind of the bulk of what the directory is about. So we have here the location, we have a map function here, so you can search again with Control or Command. We have the service opening hours, basic contact details, so phone number, website, address. For services that have social media, we have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter links as well. And this is really relevant because the idea behind this directory that's useful both for young people, the parents, the teachers, as well as for youth workers looking for referral information. And for young people especially, one of the ways they might want to understand how a service works is see how they're representing themselves on social media. That's a new functionality that we've added that wasn't in the previous iteration of this directory. We have a similar service listing, and what this is we've implemented something in this directory which we call like a parent-child relationship or a taxonomy between organizations and services. The way that the previous directory worked was a flat hierarchy. So if you had, let's say, Lgbtqia as an example, Lgbtqia is a large organization with several services in different areas of service delivery across the state, but there wasn't really a way to connect those and represent those together. What we have now is an organization function that allows you to say that this service, and this is the Youth Futures head office, we can talk about how they manage several different services and we can link those together. It's only populating the one there, but if we go back to...
Matthew, just go to Youth Futures with that, yeah.
So here we see 9 different services that fall under the auspice of Youth Futures. We have a similar functionality for Headspace. And Headspace operates quite unique in that there's the Headspace national body that kind of licenses the Headspace brand, but then we have several organizations that manage individual Headspaces. So in the case of Headspace Albany is run by Lgbtqia, same as Headspace Pilbara. Headspace for Mental Upload is 360 Health, Black Swan Health run a Headspace. So we have a way to represent when there are several supervising bodies managing a singular organization. Amy, was there anything else I'm missing here on the service listing itself?
No, I think you've covered it all.
We have the basic description here. So this is the idea is that this service listing is kind of the hook for what a young person or a parent a potential client or a youth worker that's seeking a referral, it's the hook by which they'll want to learn more and be able to learn more about your service. And so we suggest here just entering a couple of paragraphs, kind of the basic about us, what your service does, what they offer, what kind of clientele and support they can give. That's kind of the basic directory function that every directory has. But one of the main differentiations in this directory that we put together is what we call the live service tracker. Now, if you were joining us for those Youth Workers Unite sessions I mentioned earlier a couple of years ago, you may remember that we had a very rudimentary element of this where we set up a basic Google form which spoke to a Google spreadsheet, and it was a way for services to represent how their service delivery had changed amongst COVID, whether they were operating with reduced staffing, whether they'd closed entirely, whether they're doing phone contact only. What we've tried to do is implement that functionality now is in a really easy to use way for users, for young people, for clients, as well as for the youth sector. So this is how it appears as a basic preview on the homepage. And if we go to view all, and we have the live service tracker visible via this top menu as well. This is a list of every service that we have on the directory. And we have a way here of representing what a level of service disruption is. So for the majority of them right now, they're operating as normal. Most of our services are currently operating as they regularly are. They're not experiencing massive closures at this stage. But given that modelling is suggesting that we might see a similar case to what we've seen in the eastern states, where we have rolling furloughs of up to 20 to 30% of staff at an organisation at any one time, we are expecting that there'll be similar disruptions as we experienced 2 years ago, which means we'll have reduced staffing, reduced intake, perhaps only online service delivery, online or phone contact service delivery, maybe limits to face-to-face delivery, either on premises or via outreach. This is a kind of a really broad way of representing what's happening with services and allowing a user at a glance to see what that level of disruption is. And here you can click on the preview of each individual service and then follow it through to their basic service listing as we were looking at before. That's the essential functionality of how it looks on the user end. What I might go into now is as someone who's managing a service, how you might represent that, how you might add your service to this directory. So we have here a submit a service button, and I've pre-filled this one here. I'm just going to run through the really basics of what we want in each of these fields. So service name is how your service is publicly known. So I'm using Youth Futures Community School in Midland here as an example. Social media links, public email. Now, this is the email that you want people to contact you at. So, for instance, if I was doing this for YACWA, I wouldn't put my personal email. I'd put our generic email, yacwa@yacwa.org.au. Similarly, this is what Youth Futures have for theirs. It's their basic info email. It's their public-facing email. Telephone, website, directory listing email. Now, this is the email that you'd have for the person who is managing the directory. We're using the same one in this instance, but if I was making the YACWA one, I'd probably put my own personal email here so that if someone is contacting me about this directory and about managing my listing, that would be the email I'd use for that. Minimum and maximum age for service delivery. For a lot of organisations, that'll be the basic definition that we use for youth in WA of 12 to 25, but there might be some that have very specific levels of service delivery. That might go, it might be more narrow within those means, or it might be broad, or it might be all ages, it might be 0 to 99. We still encourage services who have that service delivery focus that is across all ages to include that if necessary. The service preview. So this is just a really simple sentence about what the service offers, and the way this is displayed is this is what pops up in this about area just here, like we have here for Headspace Cannington. So a really simple log line or one line example of what your service does. And then here the service description. So this is what I was talking about before, the 2 or 3 paragraphs that outlines in detail the elevator pitch of your service, what they offer, what kind of services are available, what level of support, what those areas of service delivery are, as well as the clientele and cohorts that you'll support with that service. Address. It's fairly self-explanatory. And then categories. So this determines what then appears, or whether your service appears in those categories I was showing on the front end. You can select as many as you like, or just a singular one. In the case of this Youth Futures service for the community school, it's just education and training. In the case of if I was uploading YACWA, it'd be advocacy and peak bodies. But if you hold control or command, you can select or deselect as many as are relevant for your service there. Logo upload, I've already uploaded one here for Youth Futures for their logo. Opening hours, when that opens and closes, again, fairly intuitive. And that's the submission process. I would hit submit here, but I've actually already pre-filled this one. And I'll just show you how that looks on the back end for this in just a moment. Actually, before I do that, Naomi, I might just get you to jump in for a little bit. If you wanted to talk about how we've incorporated the youth-friendly doctors into this.
Yep, sure. So hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Very excited to be launching this product. It's been a while. So for anybody who isn't familiar with youth-friendly doctors, it is an AMA-WA program. So essentially it's training provided to doctors in youth-specific health issues. So after completing a number of the workshops, then they can go on to become a youth-friendly doctor. So it has been around for a long time, but the benefit of adding it onto the Youth Services Directory is that it provides essentially a one-stop shop type product. So everyone can come onto the service and they can find health professionals if they need to, or they can also go to the services. Something that I noticed over the last couple of years in my role is that we would often have services phoning up about the program, asking about it and being unsure about how they can go about finding a GP in particular that they felt comfortable sending their young person to. So it's quite exciting to be able to provide this the youth-friendly doctors in conjunction with the services. So it works in a similar kind of way. So you can location-based is what we have primarily gone for because it is the most relevant when searching for a doctor, and it kind of gives that information, and will also list the clinics as well. So if there is one clinic that has a number of youth-friendly doctors, then you can also search through that way. We are hoping to build it out a little bit more. Bulk billing is something that is sort of quite often discussed. So we're hoping that we can kind of make this a little bit more comprehensive so that for yourselves, if you're looking for youth-friendly doctors, but also for young people trying to use this the product as well. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Naomi. I might just mention a couple other things about categories here. So we've broken this down as best we can by looking at what other directories are, by talking to services, and by using the examples that we had in our previous iteration of the service directory for how we represent different types of service delivery. There are a couple of cohort-specific things that we have in here, and there's potential that we might be adding more. But those particular ones are Aboriginal and Indigenous specific services and LGBTQAI plus specific services. Now we know that most services will offer their service to all cohorts. And the idea behind this is that if you're a young person in particular and you're looking for services that specifically represent your needs, is that this is a way to represent that. So if we have here for LGBTQAI plus specific services, these are services whose cohort or whose work is either exclusively or primarily focused on that demographic. So the example I might use is Pride Space Rockingham. This is a fortnightly or occasionally monthly night that they offer at the City of Rockingham Youth Centre. If this was something that was just sort of embedded into what City of Rockingham do, it'd be a lot harder to find for a young person. If you're a young person, you're living in the City of Rockingham and you're looking for a safe space or something where you can meet like-minded folk, it'd be a little bit more difficult to find that within a regular City of Rockingham listing when they're talking about the full scope of youth services they offer. So having something specific here for that is a way to isolate that and make it a lot more searchable and accessible for young people. Even though it's only available on a fairly infrequent basis of every 2 to 4 weeks, we think it's best to represent it that way. So if you do have a service offering that is really specific to that demographic or to Aboriginal and Indigenous young people, that's probably best to have as a separate listing. Similarly, for what we want to constitute a listing of what defines a service, the parameters we're using is that if you have something that's in a different location, that's probably best being a different service listing. So if you're a homelessness and housing accommodation provider and you have 5 different locations, that's probably best represented as 5 different service listings. Similarly, if you have a program that is really, really detailed and worthy of its own individual separation from your regular level of service delivery, that's the kind of thing that's probably best represented as its own listing. So, and we know a lot of service providers will have their arms in many different areas of service delivery. It's probably ideal if you want to really focus on, let's say, your FDV program or a disability service, is to make that an individual service listing, even if it might end up being in the same location. If it's in a different location, absolutely make it something separate. If it's in the same location, you think it is going to be more easy for users and for clients and for people in the sector to find individually, make it probably a separate listing. Now, all of these service listings are managed by the services themselves. So if you have your listing here, we'll be sending an email to you in the next couple of days with your password information of how you can log in and manage your service yourself. I'm just going to show you a little bit of how that looks on the back end of this website. And if you have used WordPress before, this is probably fairly familiar to you. I'm using the example of Youth Futures again. So here we have 7 different services that are managed by this one Youth Futures account. It could be that when you have services in different locations, you might want a separate account based upon different people knowing the ins and outs of that service more. That's an option too. But for argument's sake here, we're putting all of these under the branch of the singular Youth Futures user. And we're going to just look at the Youth Futures Community School in Midland that I was looking at before. So this is how it looks on the back end of the website. And this is where you edit it once you've logged in and submitted your service. So we have, so if you want to change anything or if you want to remove or add anything, this is where we do it. So we have the website, the email, contact details, telephone, maximum age. If you want to change the categories or the offering of what this service does, this is how we do that. We simply click on this link, it opens up a drop down, and then we can tag them as we go. Similarly, we can just remove them just as easily. Service description and preview. This is the really quick 1-sentence one that I was showing before. And then the service description itself, which is the more detailed elevator pitch of what that service offers. If you have a change to the social media links for your service, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, this is where we do that. This area, and this is not in the submit a service form I showed before, this is once your service listing is actually up. And this is how we represent different levels of service interruption. So by default, we'll have it as operating as normal. But let's say in a couple of months' time, this service is still operating, but it's had some severe disruptions. We would hold Control on Windows or Command if we're on a Mac, and select the different levels of service interruption that you're experiencing. So let's say it's reduced staffing, reduced intake, and only offering face-to-face outreach. That's how we would represent that. And if you want to add some extra text here about the crisis status, let's say this is happening only open on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday now. That's how we would represent that change. We have a box here that won't be relevant for most services, but if you do have a service that's always open, let's say a crisis line or something where there's always staffing available, you tick that and that removes the opening hours. But for most, that won't apply. For instance, of this school, that won't apply. Change your opening hours, this is where that can be updated. And if there's a change to the address or location of your service, this is where that can be updated. Similarly, if there's a new contact for who is managing your service on the back end, that's where that's updated in the email contact here. Once I've made those changes, actually, so one more is I can add here, this is the kind of parent-child taxonomy I was talking about before. So let's say, for instance, if Youth Futures Community School in Midland decides to partner with Anglicare, and now this is now a service run by both Anglicare and Youth Futures, we can add this, and this will then change how it's represented at this level of the organisation. So City of Rockingham is this one, but we can add as many as we need to for there. Once all those changes have been made and I'm happy with them, I can go hit update. And that will now be live on the front page of the website. And this will now update on the live service tracker. It might take 5 minutes or so for it to pop up. But on the live service tracker, we'll also see this last updated function, which is useful for users who are trying to see how recently that update has been made and therefore how relevant that information is. We've added a number of these quite a while ago when we were developing the website. So for now, all of these, the chronology is a little bit out of order there. But once services are updating this quite frequently, it'll be useful for users to see, okay, we can see that there's something had reduced staffing 3 days ago. This service had operating as normal 14 days ago. It might be worth calling them to see if that's still the case. And here we have the example of the Youth Futures that I was just talking about. So we're now representing that live essentially of what the level of service delivery is. Just to update that in the back end. So once that disruption is over, we can then go to operating as normal. We can remove this crisis status information. Hit update. If this is working live. Now it's back to operating as normal. Now, that's the basic run through of this directory. That's the functionality on the front end and the back end. But we do have a number of future developments in place. We don't want this to fall into the trap that admittedly the previous iteration of YACWA's Youth Services Directory fell into, which is a case of having a product that is then on the internet but not frequently updated or frequently maintained. And we're working with our developers to constantly update this and add some new functionality. We'll be adding an advanced search function that will allow for more detailed filtering of things like age brackets and distance from a certain location. We'll be adding a functionality for a service spotlight to provide a weekly highlight of a particular service, providing a bit more information on what they do and just allowing services to have a little bit of a focal point on them. We're also looking into having more detailed service information on a service listing, around referral information, and potentially around vaccine status as well, as that need grows. And we'll be growing this data exponentially, we see, in the coming weeks and months and years. We currently have, I think, roughly 500 or so services, including youth-friendly doctors on there. But we hope to have a couple thousand within several months' time to really represent the full scope of the youth service landscape in WA and the ecosystem. And that's kind of one of our aims here is not just to represent, or not just to have information available for users on what services are available, but to also demonstrate the ecosystem and how all these services are interconnected, which is a big part of why we have that taxonomy and the parent-child organisation service relationship. Naomi, is there anything else you wanted to add to that on some future plans we have in the coming months?
Yeah. So, in terms of future plans, or where we're heading on to from here.
Future developments. Yeah.
So something that we would like to add on is a community notice board. So the theory behind this is, so both doctors could log into this as well as youth services who are onto the system. But what this would allow is for services and doctors to be able to communicate. So, for example, if there's a service that are in desperate need for, say, donations for a particular thing, you can post this up. Other services and health professionals can see that this is going on, and it will provide an opportunity to be able to support each other. or if a service is running something that they actually like to see if they can get doctors or health professionals out for, medical practitioners, it would also provide an opportunity to kind of create that space where hopefully we can see what's going on. See what's going on between the two groups. So yeah, that's in the pipelines as well. We are also very, very open to feedback. So if there are things that you would like to see from the Youth Services Directory, please do feel free to let us know.
Thank you, Naomi. Just from where to from here. So again, for services that already have a listing on the website, we'll be sending out password information soon. If that hasn't arrived with you by the end of the week, please let us know, because it could be that the email sits with somewhere else within your organization. For services that don't have a listing, you're now able to start adding services as you wish. So let's say if you're a service, there's only a small sample of what your service offers or what your organization offers is on this directory. You can start adding everything that's not represented there, or if none of your services are on there, you can also do the same. The way this process works is that this will then go to Naomi and myself to just manually input. Right now it is a manual system, just as we're launching and opening it up. We might look at automating it in the future, but there should be no more than a 24-hour turnaround between you submitting a listing and then us pushing it live to the website. As Naomi said, we've been working on this project for quite a while, and how we envisioned it, or how it's landed is changed a lot from how we envisioned it, and we expect that to continue changing. A resource like this is really only as useful as people are willing to buy into it, and we know that there'll be improvements to make. We know there'll be adjustments to make. We know there'll be bugs and errors, as well as potential new features and things that we can update, especially as we look at the live service tracker and the changing needs of the COVID context. We do have several of those previously mentioned developments in the works, but our priority over the coming months is making it as responsive and relevant in this COVID context as possible. All of which is to say that we're open to all feedback, whether it's positive or negative or suggestions or elements of it you found that are broken or dysfunctional or could be changed. We welcome all of that. And then we can just pop our emails into the chat just so those are available for folks. What I might actually do now, we're just a little over halfway through our allotted time, but I might just allow, if anyone has any questions or feedback they'd like to offer, I'm just changing the settings on this webinar now so folks can jump in with their camera and mic. If anyone's keen to put their hand up and ask any questions about how this works or what some of the plans might be, or anything else you might want to say. Susan's just asked when we plan to promote this on social media, starting now, more or less. This is essentially the first instance of promotion and public revelation of this directory that we've had. So we'll be enacting our marketing plan in the coming weeks and spreading this out. So if this is now free to share as well, if you want to share this with the rest of your service or with young people or users or anyone else, please promote this widely. It's been a secret we've been sitting on for a while, but now it's very much out in the open. So yes, we'll be shouting from the rooftops about this for many weeks to come. Were there any other queries or questions or thoughts? I see Jody Byte, you've had your hand up, but it may have been up for a while.
I think that was from the test.
I see. Thank you, Jody. If there's nothing else, we might then close it here, almost half an hour early, my goodness. Naomi and myself are really open to any feedback you might have, so feel free to email us with any questions or any errors you might encounter or just suggestions for how we can improve on this. This is by no means a finished product. It's something that's functional and we're happy with it and we're happy to launch it and put it out there now, but it's something we'll also be continually updating and developing for quite some time, where there are lots of developments in the pipeline as mentioned, and lots of pie in the sky ideas that we're trying to bring back to the ground and turn into something we can make more functional. So yeah, we hope that it's useful to you, and we hope that you'll submit and update your service, and share this with any people who could benefit, whether it's in the sector or potential clients or young people or parents or teachers or anyone else who might benefit from this. Yeah. Anything else you want to add, Naomi?
No, that's it. Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you for the support and the positive comments that are coming through. It's very encouraging.
We'll be uploading this video to probably the YACWA YouTube later this week, and then putting together some basic demonstrations of some of the stuff I've gone through, just as their own separate little clips. Otherwise, thank you everyone for being here, and we'll chat again soon.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks, folks.